First of all, I would like to mention and thank our colleagues in Eden for organizing a very regular series of events each autumn since 2016. So we have already the 7th European Open Distance Learning Week, which this year is dedicated to new achievements in quality of digital education. That is very, very urgent, and especially after the 2 years of pandemic. So we dedicated our final day of the week to one of the most important actually topic of this week. To finalize it, we also see that sometimes the voice of students appears also in the frameworks as the final, so to say, emphasis. And we thought that it is quite fair for us to dedicate Friday for students. And today we will speak about student engagement from online learning design quality perspectives, because teachers have to prepare first, and then we invite students for online learning. And the focus of today's session will be on the role of learning analytics. I will just mention that this webinar today is in line in the framework of one of the Erasmus Plus project, DigiProf project, that is implemented by Eden, Digital Learning Europe, and the consortium behind. Today we have a session of 1.5 hours, and this session will be dedicated mostly to presentations, but in the end we hope to have a discussion with you participants. But of course you will be invited to post your questions, and we will post our answers in the question and answer area, but as well we will be looking for your comments in the chat. So it is my pleasure today to introduce to you our team who will be making presentations. So Lourdes Guardia, Deputy Dean of Teaching and Associate Professor at the Faculty of Psychology and Education Sciences at the Open University of Catalunya. Marcelo Maina, Director of the Master in Education and ICT e-Learning and Associate Professor at the Faculty of Psychology and Education Sciences at the Open University of Catalunya. I also joined them as a professor at Education Academy and Director of Senior Research at the Institute for Study Innovations at Vytautas Magnus University in Lithuania. And our two colleagues, Luisa Malerba, a researcher at the Faculty of Psychology and Education Sciences at the Open University of Catalunya, and Giedrė, Tamoliūnė, lecturer at the Education Department and researcher at the Institute for Study Innovations at Vytautas Magnus University. So you see that we mainly come from two higher education institutions, one based in Barcelona, another in Kaunas, but we have the whole international team behind us. So we will have 3 presentations, and then we will have discussion with you. I hope that each presenter or the group of presenters will think about 5 minutes for questions and answers after each presentation, if possible. So let me now invite Lourdes and Marcelo to start with the first presentation on student engagement techniques based on evidence. So please, Lourdes, Marcelo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Airina. Thank you, Eden, for inviting us to participate in this exciting week. We will be making a presentation together with my colleague Lourdes, and you have already introduced us, so I'll skip that part. Our presentation is organized around 4 main blocks. The first one is about the notion of evidence and how it relates to a framework of digital competence for teachers. We will then introduce a little bit this new literacy, that is data literacy, that is required to be successful as a teacher and learner in the digital environments, and think about this evidence in terms of different types of then what we call a cycle of the use of evidence. Of course, big part of that evidence is coming from what we call learning analytics, where we will introduce some concepts and how it's better presented in a way that is actionable for teachers and learners. We'll give some examples of tools and plugins that are useful in learning management systems to collect this data analytic and present it. We will follow with the notion of real engagement, presenting a framework and how to measure engagement, and give us some ideas on how learning management system, tools, and learning analytics contribute to that, and best practices in terms of engagement and active learning. Finally, we produce some concrete examples of evidence and learning analytics for engagement. All of the time thinking about design processes, teachers as designers, and teachers as facilitators of learning of our students. So we think that it is very important to highlight at the very beginning that this concern that we have with digital evidence and actionable digital learning analytics comes already from the well-known digital competence framework that is in European framework that is integrated by a set of digital competence for educators. The idea is that to have a clear and comprehensive framework of all the competencies that teachers should have in this new digital era. This briefly, this digital competence framework for educators is organized around 5 main areas. We will focus today in area 4, that is the area of assessment, and you will see they have like 3 interrelated competence that is about assessment strategies, analyzing evidence, the focus is our presentation, and feedback and planning. Although the 3 of them are intimately related. Analyzing evidence relates to the generation, selection, and critical analysis and interpretation of the digital evidence of a learner activity, their performance, their progress, in order to inform teaching and learning processes. The framework goes a little bit further, helping us understand what they mean by that and what we actually have to be competent. So it presents a set of activities related to that, and there are 6 main ones, being the design and implementation of learning activity that generate data of the learner activity and their performance, meaning from the design phase and intentionally we think about gathering data that will be meaningful for us. To use these digital technologies to record and compare and synthesize this learner progress. A very important one is to be aware that learning activity in digital environment generate data. This is an approach from another perspective. We are already using different systems, but usually we don't use them in their full potential. So to be aware is of what these systems are already providing to us and make with that data meaningful decisions. Of course, we have to be able to analyze and interpret this evidence that is gathered and generated. We need to consider, combine, and evaluate different sources of evidence coming from this digital collection of learning progress and performance, and to critically value this evidence in order to inform us as teachers and learners. This is extremely related to this new literacy I was mentioning at the very beginning, that is the data literacy that is, I would say, almost mandatory today. As language was once and mathematics, now we add this one for teachers and students. The data literacy can be understood as the ability to find, evaluate, and read data critically that goes beyond this numerical and quantitative formats, the way it is presented. And it will depend on teachers and learners' digital literacy skills whether this learning analytics generated data informs teaching and learning. So we will have it there, but what do we do about that? We have to know what to do with this. So these data literacy skills relates to technical abilities, how to access and manage this big amount of data that can be sometimes overwhelming, and how to implement reflective practices on how to critically interpret that in order to fulfill our objectives. Usually for teachers will be about supporting the facilitation processes and facilitating regulation, and for learners, also very important, we're thinking about in despair all the time, about enhancement of their self-regulated learning. So evidence-based learning in this sense is a principle that teachers should use objective evidence, but most commonly understood in two ways. The one that we are probably more familiar is with the educational research. Educational research results, think about, I just give an example, what we know about collaborative learning. And through years, we've been accumulating a lot of evidence regarding how collaborative learning is important, how it can be implemented. So educational research provides principles that we may apply in the design and facilitation of collaborative activities. But also we add now the metrics of the performance that are provided by digital environments that gather quantitative data and qualitative data, usually always focus on the learning outcomes of our courses, for example. So to sum up, we have what we call a digital evidence cycle about intentionally generate evidence or use evidence that is produced by the system automatically, select them, analyze that, and interpret it in order to better monitor our students' progress and performance and make evidence-based decisions. There are many, many different types of evidence. There's a different way of classifying that. We think this is a very useful one. There was one that differentiates direct, indirect, and supporting evidence. Direct evidence coming directly, for example, so from examination, student portfolios, the rubrics we use in evaluation. Indirect evidence that is more costly, if you want, coming from interviews we can do with a focus group, the student surveys, alumni surveys, and other supporting evidence that comes from more program perspective and from curriculum that relates to graduation rates, students' publications, but also coming from the social context in where our graduates intervene, like job placement rates. All of these are evidence that will help us improve our experiences. Part of that, a very new one, quite new one that is being developed, explored, researched, is learning analytics. Learning analytics can be understood as a tool for assessment, interpretation, analysis of learner-generated data in online environments, usually. And it can be categorized in four main blocks. One that is more descriptive, that will tell us something about what happened in the course. One that is predicted, that will happen next. If we have the right combination of information and data that we need, we can be a step forward and make decisions regarding a better way to support our student. One that is more diagnostic, why did it happen? And one that is prescriptive, do this to improve. So we can take decision already pre-established by a good set of information available. In general, they look at a system efficacy to predict students' dropout, support teaching decisions to prevent failure, orientate the student, or support the learner autonomy and self-regulated learning. Another part of the very important part of the agenda of the learning analytics. So data can come from the system in different ways. Let's think that the first level are logs or clicks that we can gather, connection time. So the system is collecting a lot of information. But how to make sense of that? Usually in granular ways, it's a little bit complicated, or they do not inform a lot. But systems provide, for example, reports on student performance. Think about reports in Moodle. They are usually oriented to respond to who, what, and when. The data are selected and combined for the scripted and monitoring purposes, or more advanced one with some kind of models that more going deep into the why and how well are performing our students. And in this case, the data are selected, combined, and converted into actionable information through more through algorithm, according to a pedagogical hypothesis. I will come later on that, so to make that more clear. But we need to interpret data, and to interpret data, we need to have it convey in a certain way that is usable for us. That is also part of the learning analytics agenda in terms of research and development, are the learning analytics dashboard. They refer to visual representation of the data that are automatically collected in the system. The learning analytic dashboard are tools displaying and representing information in a more user-friendly way, as you can see here in the images. So they help us make meaningful and actionable actions and have an idea and an insight, as it says the definition, on what is happening. We have two, again, thinking in pairs, two different kind of dashboards. The teacher ones that are the teacher-facing dashboard that represent the student learning programs and how we can action on that, and the student-facing dashboard, because they can be very useful for them also, if we also prepare them in this data literacy to interpret correctly the data. These dashboards are usually presented to students, helping them visualize their learning progress and compare sometimes to the progress of others. I won't be able to get into these demos, but just to invite you, when you have time to do it, you can explore some plugins that are presenting data visually according to different profiles, being the administration of the institution, the teacher, or the learner, and with many, many kind of different combinations, visually agreeable, and let's say easy to understand. Here I cite IntelliBoard. Here you have how the IntelliBoard can be used in Moodle, for example, but in other system can be integrated. If the system does not provide in itself, you can integrate other plugins or solutions about learning analysis and visualization from third part companies. Here you see, for example, an instructor dashboard, seeing completion of activities, of a learner dashboard that allows them to monitor their own progress and their success in regards of their activities. Just, I'm not selling any plugin. I wanted to mention another one. Here you have the learning script plugin that is also have demos. You can go there and play a little bit and get familiar with these notions of data visualization. So our main concern here is how to work in environments that engage students in learning, because we know that engagement delivers better results. And engagement is a very, a little bit fluid concept. I here will cite Bohr and Beddenlayer framework that is quite comprehensive and more easy to understand, identifying engagement, the energy and effort that the students employ with the other learning community. They don't not only relate to themselves, and they are observable via a number of behavioral, very important here, behavioral, cognitive, and affective indicators across a continuum during the process. This is also measured always in regards of outcomes that the framework defines in two ways. The short-term outcomes more related to the course, think about learning outcomes within a course, and the social interaction within the course, the feeling of belonging, the feeling of a pleasure of being part of a community of studying together, and the long-term outcomes that also motivate a lot engagement. We have to think about, for example, what brings a student into a program or a course, so they have long-term outcomes of succeeding in their career, or being socially present and being referenced, for example, in a certain way in their discipline area. This framework also provides some ideas about indicators that will help us see and detect where engagement is being manifested in a certain way. And of course, here is the long list. I only highlight the cognitive engagement about self-regulation, reflection, the understanding of concepts, or for example, measuring that if you see that they are doing some extra effort to learn that can be manifested when students, for example, cite other sources than the ones we provided as mandatory in a course and they are using. So these are ways of seeing how engagement is going on. Of course, in affective engagement, the sense of belonging I was talking about, the satisfaction, the positive interaction with peers and teachers, and the behavioral ones that are probably the most direct to detect, like attendance, marks, number of posts, interaction with peers. There's two main ways to see also engagement in a course, and here I cite the Chi and Wiley framework, the ECAP, that stands for interactive, constructive, active, and passive activities we can offer to our students, all of them engagement in a cognitive way, in a different way, but all the time engagement. We don't have to think about passive, and here I want to point to that, only as something that will not engage a student, because passive listening could deal also with, for example, note-taking. And the idea is going from this passive receiving to the active manipulating with the content and the activities we provide to them. So think about it as different activities where the more active they are, the better. Another way to see engagement is more from a chronological perspective. And this is Conrad Donaldson example of how we may think also engagement as a process throughout the course. That, of course, when here he provides a way to deconstruct that, split that into weeks, as we usually think about our courses. And then at the very beginning, we have different types of teacher engagement and expected learner engagement throughout the course. At the very beginning could be activities that are interactive and try to break the ice, like one of the activities that are proposed, or individual introductions in order to start to develop this climate and the sense of belonging to a group. We move forward in time, and then we'll think about other kind of activities like a dias of learner, whether we can promote critical thinking, reflection, the sharing of ideas, and the activities could be peer reviews or activity critiques. Moving forward again, we can think about collaboration, and here the teacher also start changing their role, as you see in the table, more as a facilitator and giving more room to students. So deciding on proposing small groups to collaborate, solve problems, reflect on experience through different activities like content discussion, role-playing, debates, and of course, and not mandatory in every course, but this is an example that tries to illustrate everything, is about giving the learner more empowerment through learn and design or learn and led activities. And here with examples are about projects and presentation of projects and solutions or cases that we'll see later. So summing up, digital technologies may foster learning active engagement, and we can use this data to provide us an opportunity to observe, measure, and understand learning in order to make informed decisions. Measuring this engagement, as Di Mello presents in this recent publication of the Digital Education Outlook 2021, presents different ways we can measure this engagement. And as we were seeing indicators now before, there are the traditional measurement approaches that are timely and demand a lot of effort, but they are very important also. I provide a lot of information. The more qualitative one that refers to what we know as self-report questionnaires, very beginning, at the end, interviews and observational methods. But there are automated, and we are interested in that part in particularly, digital measurement. One that is abducted from the information that is generated through the system while students are performing and participating in the course. These are two kinds. We can distinguish one, the pre-configured ways like reports and modules in Moodle, but also grade, for example, and other configured ways like quizzes. Here you see in the image a Moodle Bintina report that provides information, visual one, regarding activity completion. And we can see students in their progress. And of course, it's mentioned also some more advanced and at the stage of research, advanced and experimental that relates to eye tracking, haptic technologies, and sensor technologies, measuring facial features, body movement. But this is still under research. So I leave room to my colleague Lourdes, who will present us some examples.
Yeah, 5 minutes left, Airina?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Marcelo, for this introduction that helps us to better understand the use of learning analytics for educational purposes and especially for encouraging student engagement. So let's go now to briefly introduce some examples of activities about how we can promote this engagement. These examples are not theoretical. All cases we are going to present are already tested in our subjects, so are real cases we experimented and with very positive results. So we have activities like forums or debates that from we can obtain data about the contribution, like the number of students, participants, the quality of the contributions, if are related to other contributions, if they use the words linked to the topic and so on. And the teacher can provide a direct intervention encouraging participation, motivating students, making explicit the relevance of the participation. But we will see the example in more detail in another slide. Another activity could be an assignment that provide data through a pre-configured action in the learning management system, for example, that about the activity completion, like a Moodle report that the teacher can receive, and the system automatically sent a message to the student reminding the pending task. Teacher also can send a message offering support or the same automatic message could inform about that. The example was already presented by Marcelo before. Another activity could be the e-portfolio that allows to monitor the students through the evidence and reflections presented. I can show you in more detail in another slide. Another activity with very good results is the use of case studies as an adaptive learning strategy. So the objective is to ask the students about their preferences, and the system automatically assigns the case that better fits their interest. And finally, another activity could be preventing dropout, using the students at risk of dropping out Moodle in Moodle. I model in Moodle. So, and the system sends a message to the students based on a data report. So let's see in more detail the example about the forum. In this case, we use Diana. Diana was an application developed by one of our PhD students that analyzes the students' messages that helps the learning process and improves academic results. With this technology, our objective as teachers is to reduce the dropout rate. In this example, it was around 60%. And increase the students' average and grade qualification by 1 point. That this was very positive for us. The application is showing the percentage of the interactive participation, the dialogue and the negotiation promotion, type of communication using graphical representation showing notes and relationships, and also number of shared documents, publications. To be more precise, the consistency and regularity in group interaction, communicative style and language, for example, that the students use, exchange of information within the group, and so on. So also a list of the most frequently used words is provided to the teachers to see if the conversation is addressing the topics proposed, if it takes the right direction, the richness of the conversation. So teacher could intervene, give tips or clues, redirect the conversation if needed, engage the participation of all students, and so on. Another example that I mentioned is the portfolio linked to the graphical representation that shows the student progression in terms of competence development. So first, the activity student portfolio presents the continuous reflection, promoting self-regulation strategies. At the same time, the generation of this evidence that the students are showing and presenting, supported by artifacts sometimes, are learning activities that showcase their outputs and learning outcomes. So the teacher can see at any moment the portfolio. If a student is adding new content, the interaction with other students or external visitors, if the portfolio has a public section, and so on. So this is a very interesting example. Another example is the Moodle adaptive learning. A case-based learning and personalization strategy was used in one of our subjects in a master level about education and ICT with adult students with different backgrounds and professional interests. We built a database of case studies related to the discipline and the competences that should be developed in our subject. We provided a quiz based on student preference and professional background, and a prompt of the best fit case study from a case study database and the Moodle plugin assigned automatically the best case study for the student based on their needs, expectations, profile, and so on. This allows us to encourage motivation and performance because the activity can be more significant for the students. So same system can be used for other actions, of course, not only for providing case studies, but also as a complement resource, a remedial activity regarding improvement, and so on. And finally, the last example shows a Moodle student at risk of dropping out. So the system measures the cognitive and social dimensions of the educational experience of the students. In terms of social, as you can see, it informs about if students view the activity details, submitting content to the activity, viewed feedback from an instructor or peer, provided feedback to the instructor or a peer within the activity, revise it and submit it, and so on. And in terms of social, if the learner has not interacted with any other participant in this activity, the interaction with at least one other participant, interaction with multiple participants in this activity, interaction with participant in at least one, and so on. So we can see here some examples. It was very quick because I know that I have just 5 minutes. This is all for us. So if you have questions, now is your turn.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, Marcelo and Lourdes. Yes, indeed, the presentation was very, very interesting and raised already quite some questions that were received in the questions and answers area. Just before we go to answer them, I would like to inform the participants of the session that due to the majority of participants, we have big numbers of participants in our sessions, and now we have almost 90 people at the moment participating. So we apologize, but we are not able to give you the floor to use microphones or cameras. But please put all your questions and comments in the chat, and also, of course, using question and answer area. So in the questions and answers, we received really several questions, and I would like to pose maybe 2 questions, and to ask Lourdes and Marcelo to answer the rest of the questions in writing form, if possible, because it also allows interaction. So the first question to you that maybe was answered to some extent already is the following. How is your experience with learning analytics data from VLEs, LTI tools linked in the VLEs, MS Teams, and similar synchronous platform? We found it challenging to access the data from different platforms, and they are often inconsistent and incomplete, says Uwe Richter. What would your comments be? Please answer.
First of all, we use our own system here at our university, and I think that the idea is try to select exactly what we want and talk to our administrator. It depends what your role. I don't know if the person who is asking is a teacher. You have to decide with them what kind of data you want to be presented, because gathering data is not a problem. We can gather enormous amount of data. Using this already pre-configured ways of presenting and visualizing data may be useful because they have been tested, and I wouldn't go too far in this sense of adding and more information. I would strictly stay with all the main information I actually need. So of course, when you use different and outside other applications, the way they present each one will be a little bit different and can be a little bit overwhelming. Just answering also what can all student engagement indication be presented in the tool? Yes and no, it depends. All the ones that you presented here are more theoretically developed for the moment, but not all they have an answer at the level of the system and how it collects data. Anyway, you have to choose whatever you want and why you want to use this data. And this is part of the data literacy and filtering all this information.
Thank you very much, Marcelo. I will ask you to look later at questions and answers, because there are many very concrete but very technical, I would say, questions from Anders Adlemo. But there is one interesting that I would like to pick up from Živilė Pačiauskienė. Thank you very much. Would that be reasonable to use this plugin? I understand one of the plugins that could be used for learning analytics, for hybrid learning or for regular contact classes instead of distance education. What do you think?
I think yes. I don't know, Lourdes, if you want to.
I'm not really expert Moodle because, as Marcelo commented, so we are using our own platform. So, but I'm sure that yes, you can, if it's the activities are hybrid, you can for sure pre-configure activities with this kind of plugins that can support you in this sense. So I don't see any problem.
In terms of engagement, I would add what I presented before. We can collect data that is automatically harvest. I think they use this term usually when I read about that. Harvest, you know, this from system. But also you can intentionally, as I was saying, create activities to collect the data. So actually, we can ask for, you know, in a quiz, something about comprehension as a subject, and then direct a student to other additional resources, remedial activities, as was Lourdes presented as an example. So we don't have only to rely on the online. We can also measure what happened while they were not online. But if we provide an activity that can collect at the end of that what's happening, it will be useful also. So we don't have to anguish in terms that we cannot follow the person every moment, every time, but we can make inference or design activities to collect data. That is part of the DigCom Edu, as I introduced at the beginning.
And I think that we have seen many examples. I remember from Barcelona research workshop that didn't organize that, and there are examples that we can collect a lot of data using different tools. But the most important thing is to know why and what kind of data and for what purposes it's used and what they will have impact for. Thank you very much. Now the time is running, and I would like to share my screen with the following presentation, if possible. And we agreed to start with the I would say maybe more focused introduction to learning analytics and also solutions. But I would like to make one step back a little bit with this presentation and to start discussing student engagement, because during your presentation, Marcelo and Lourdes, I also noticed that there are some, I would say, tensions also in the concept of engagement. So in this presentation, student engagement is treated from the cognitive perspective, cognitive point of view, not pleasure or, you know, motivation with the emotional experience or something else. So actually, first of all, I love old literature, and I search for as old as possible. It's not very old, I must declare, only the 70s. But it's not a secret that the studies of self-concept and academic success prove this very, very much interrelated dependence between self-concept and academic success. So before we perceive ourselves, we most probably are less likely to achieve academic success and vice versa. So this bidirectional or reverse relationship was also proved. And I will speak only about the studies that relate with academic achievement and self-concept. And of course, there is also another direction that is proved between the relationship between self-concept and behavioral problems. But behavioral problems is also a part of academic success relationship as well. So in the school that we attended for almost 20-30 years, which is Eden, I would say, in research and other practice establishments, we, I think, all witnessed very important developments in the area that innovative teaching methods and application of technologies is one of the ways actually to improve student engagement. But again, we should be very accurate about it, not to be lost. And we don't speak about happy students, younger or older adult learners, ourselves, who, let's say, increase the hormones now, liking things on the Facebook or social media, but with a focus on academic achievement. And innovative teaching methods like field experiences introduced, guest speakers invited, role play exercises, simulations, research projects in different sizes of the group produce positive changes in both behavior and achievement in both middle school and high school students. And the research also explicitly links thoughts, feelings, and actions, and says that we may enhance the development and integration of affective and cognitive brain functions through this. So online learning, again, it's not a secret, and I think it's already evidence that it has the great potential for more self-directed or self-regulated learning, but as well for flexible structures of engagement, which can increase student levels of autonomy, emotional independence, and self-directions. And what we just saw in the examples in the previous presentation, we can get data about learning, about progress, where we have student dashboards and teacher dashboards, as was presented, where students can be informed about their progress and monitor of their success. Just recently, during the years of lockdown, we identified two major groups that need to be maybe better engaged, or at least identified where they are at the moment, because nobody can know where students are, especially if they are not connected and they are not visible in a physical classroom. So we have sometimes very hard-working students who master self-regulated learning, and they just progress on their own, and they bring their successful assignments to the teacher in the virtual learning environment or in another digital venue where they are supposed to post them. But sometimes we have to identify, intervene, and fix the problem, because some people might be missing. And if they are missing even from the digital environment, which is virtual learning environment in the majority of cases, if it is a digitally competent organization and has such environment in place, and if we don't see them, this is an issue. But sometimes their progress is slower, and then with the help of learning analytics, we can advance it. So student engagement in one or another way will touch upon self-concept development, brain function development, behavior development, which will lead to academic success. And we argue that application of learning analytics might be very helpful here. How? So it was already presented, and Lourdes presented practical examples, but we also have Michael Graham-Moore from Eden as well, our old colleague, that already in 1993 suggested that actually dialogue and interaction are the major tools. And this dialogue and interaction can happen among different players, and not only bilaterally, but multilaterally. So learner-teacher, learner-content, learner-learner. And it was really recognized even then as a crucial variable. But many people argued that online learning and application of technologies in education increases distance, and that it is very challenging and it is very complicated then to establish this dialogue and interaction. And then research again went into an analysis and collecting research data to start really proving that this is true. And in the area of distance education, in the area of online learning and teaching, it was proved that actually there are different types of personalities, different types of learning organization methods, different types of interaction. And Michael suggested that this is a crucial characteristic for student engagement in their learning, which naturally reduces their experience of distance. But of course, the question is, we have to know how to approach it. We have to have expert knowledge in order how to do that. And then, of course, I suggest and recommend to many colleagues the research team from University of Athabasca by Marty Cleven and also Terry Anderson and other colleagues who worked on the community of inquiry model. And it was already argued by these researchers that there are mandatory elements in virtual learning environment, in learning design that we offer for our students, which is social presence, cognitive presence, teaching presence, and emotional presence, not emotional pleasure, but emotional presence. And all of these are really critical components. And for those who got interested in that or here for the first time, I encourage you to visit and read. Then we have new research, new 2020 in the Journal of Education, Technology and Higher Education, where we have significant factors in creating a high quality online learning experience from students' perspectives. And students say that there are mandatory elements or components in virtual learning environment that we should introduce. And then we might expect and learning analytics and data and to be informed and to get dashboards and to work with the data that we receive from the environments. So these elements are composed of basic online modality. Basic for us is like basic economic car, I would say, that we buy the cheapest and pay the cheapest. Presence, online social comfort, online interactive morality, and social presence. So you see a lot that is related with the community of inquiry model, but is a little bit in more detail described and in more component-based mode presented. Now, self-direction, self-regulation, self-awareness are very, very important elements for all to be established, I would say, at early school and then general school and then, of course, university studies. And we applied metacognition theories by the researchers that you see here summarized in a table by Emily Lay by Pearson, that actually, if we follow metacognition theory on the level of cognition and in the regulation of the cognition, we might also establish the link between metacognitive theory and learning analytics as metacognitive tool. We tried to unpack this theory in the perspective of learning analytics and to put two major aims. Why teachers should use learning analytics as metacognitive tool. The first major aim is that it would help teachers to improve teaching and learning process and learning design. And for students, if students are also participating in metacognitive processes and also have student dashboards, if this is as much as advanced as in Open University of Catalonia, for example, then we can expect that with the help of these tools, we might involve students into metacognitive strategies in order to improve their learning process, but also improve learning design through the feedback provided by students. So we worked a lot on that, and finally we came up to several of the publications. One of these is Learning Analytics as a Metacognitive Tool to Engage Students. And here, I'm sorry, I have some problems most probably with the slides, but we came to the model where we established very, very concrete statements that support teachers in designing their learning in virtual learning environment, on how they should approach in a reflective mode learning design phase, teaching design phase, and then how they would consider their teacher inquiry cycle. So thinking about how I designed my course, how I implemented my course, what data I have, and on the basis of this data, what my next steps would be. So regulation and improvement phase. So to start with, we all as teachers might start with the very, very simple steps, asking our students how they perceive themselves as learners. So what knowledge do they have about themselves as learners? In my experience, I would start my lessons, introductory classes with my students, asking them to introduce themselves. And most likely they will bring to me information about their families, their favorites, their hobbies, and you know, how they want to spend their time. But then I understood that I'm asking the wrong question. I should ask them to introduce themselves as learners. And of course, technologies are here in place for us to get data about their answers, qualitative data, of course. So we had also further research on that, and we tried to identify the responsibilities by the teachers, by the students, but also by representatives from academic institutions, support units, and such units like e-learning units or academic units, and also the requirements for virtual learning environment, coming back to the previous slides, what they should embed in themselves so that teachers would be able to access this data. So very, very simple steps are to use just, for example, we use Moodle in our university. So to use progress bars, to use data about accessibility of different resources, when, how, who implemented assignments, accessed resources, completed activities. And this already gives a lot of ideas because the data is there, and I saw also similar examples in the presentation before to the teacher in order to consider this data and think reflectively on what we know about our students, our learning design, and how we can improve it. Okay, so to save our time for discussions, I will stop here, and we'll see if we have any questions. And if not, we have for the interesting presentations. I see Josefa, I think, asked that she would like to see any research and differences in student engagement from different countries and across continents. Of course, that would be very, very, very interesting research, comparative research. But I think we also most probably would have to establish similar conditions for experiments. For example, if we started experimenting with the data, if we started experimenting and researching the engagement of students, we first of all would need to decide what we are doing it for, so to say. If we want to improve learning design, then we would need to establish the relationships between the decisions made during the designing of our curriculum. And then because we can imagine that if we, for example, design curriculum in a sequential mode, so you start with activity 1, then you read theory, then you do activity 2, then again you maybe submit some test or assignment. So all the students will go in this way, in this sequence. But if there are possibilities for students to choose different segments of curriculum and to customize curriculum following their preferences, then we would have again completely different picture. Okay. So now I suggest that we move on, and I invite then Maria Luisa and Giedrė to open their presentation and introduce what you would.
Thank you, Airina. Let me just share the screen. Okay, can you see the screen and my presentation? My screen?
Yes, not in presenter mode. We see also your.
My presentation, right?
Yeah, slideshow, I think.
Okay, thank you for giving me the word. I will introduce you to the DigiProf project. The project in general deals with, it's a European project dealing with the implement of transparent assessment for online learning addressed to university teachers. But our output, the work output and the Vytautas output, deals with monitor, support and engage students based on the evidence generated by digital technology, thanks to learning analytics.
I'm sorry, Maria Luisa, yes, maybe now you will move to, yes, to presentation. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. So we have, during this project, now we are in the final, the crucial part, the part of creation. But we had several steps before. As you can see here, there was a framework framing, which basically embraces many of the concepts that have already been mentioned before, so I won't focus so much on them. And the framework development. How was this framework developed? Through a collection of best practices. All the partners of the projects were asked to provide us with best practices, a good number of best practices, based on their personal experience or based on research papers. So we were in charge of the collection of these best practices. We added best practices ourselves, and this nurtured the framework. We generated a complete framework, and now we are in the phase of development of learning materials about how to foster student engagement in VLA, basically, addressed to university teachers. We are at the end of this process. Soon we will start the peer reviewing process. So your feedback is very welcome in this stage. And later, Giedrė will show you the implementation of these materials in Moodle. And then we will proceed with the translations, because now they are in English. We will proceed with the translation in all the partners' languages. I didn't mention the university, there is no time, but there are from Germany, the WOC, Portuguese University, and the University of Silesia in Poland, and Vytautas. I won't stop so much on this because I've already mentioned that we are in the phase of learning materials, the creation of learning materials. So between October and November, and then the piloting, and then the translations. The framework embraces all the concepts that have already been mentioned. So the concept of self-regulated learning, data literacy skills, digital evidence on teaching and learning analytics as a metacognitive tool, and learning analytic dashboards for data analysis. We also combine it with the DigiCompedu framework, with the section of engagement. Now, the desk research was completed a month ago. We got 20 best practices with researchers and experience from all over the world. Each partner gave us its contribution. And the framework that Airina mentioned a moment ago was very helpful for the creation of these training materials, combined with, okay, this is the checklist of the best practices, where they come from. As you can see, we had a wide range from all over the world. And so the training materials based on this methodological framework and also on the framework by the DigiCompedu, the section of engagement. I want to show you now. I will give the word to Giedrė that will show the materials online, but first I wanted to show you 1 second because I've opened it here. okay, the map, how we have structured them. There are 3 units. One is designing evidence-based teaching and learning strategies that foster self-regulated learning in VUAL-E. The second unit is about analyzing and interpreting evidence-based data to inform teaching and learning. And the third unit is supporting and engaging learners through evidence-based data. Each one of these units has a subunit, and then ends with the quiz and self-reflective questions. And at the end, we have a final activity. We wanted to make these learning materials as much interactive as possible. Of course, they are academic. There are academic references, but we wanted to make them also simple and easy to read. And I forgot to say that at the beginning, there is a conceptual introduction with the very good slides that show what has already been mentioned before. So now I think that Giedrė can talk, so I will stop sharing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you a lot, Maria Luisa, for this introduction. And I will share my screen as well. Just one slide now for a short introduction. But before this, before introducing this course, I want to invite you to share your experience or questions on how learning analytics is used in your own personal practice to inform teaching and learning. Maybe you have some feedback on the course that we will present now, or maybe you will have some suggestions, or you want to leave your contacts if you're interested to learn more about the course. Please feel free to share, to use Padlet wall that we have created, and you can leave your comments there as well. So as Maria Luisa already presented, we have developed a lot of material already, which is still in the progress of development. And now I want to invite you to this quick walkthrough of our course. And as you see in this slide, this course is developed in a sequential order in a way to foster teachers' metacognition and their metacognitive decision-making on how to make data-informed decisions on learning design and on learners' engagement. As you see, and Maria Luisa already mentioned, the course consists of a conceptual framework and introduction, which explains all the key concepts of the course. Then there are 3 units developed, and I will go in a minute more deeply throughout the course, and you be more specific maybe on the content itself. So, okay, let's have a look at what the course looks like so far. And just to note, the content is still under the development, so it is not fully finalized. It should be finished in the next week. And so some topics and some titles will still be changed. So if you feel that something might be inconsistent or not clear enough, so please forgive us, just we're still in the process of developing it. So, okay, welcome to the course Monitoring, Supporting and Engaging Students based on the evidence generated by digital technologies. And this material provides guidelines and recommendations on how you, as a teacher, may design the course so that it would generate data about learners' engagement, their behavior, with the learning content, and ensure data-informed decision-making to improve your teaching and learning. So as you see at the very beginning of the course, we have this short introduction where we explain and introduce that it is a self-paced course, meaning that teacher won't be able to have tutor to support him. It is for self-study, and it is free, and it will be open to everyone who will register to the platform and to the course. And it is expected that teachers will be able to complete the course. It would take around 30 hours. And before starting the course, we invite teachers to take this short quiz and to answer the short question and self-assess their proficiency level on their evidence analysis competence. And these are levels introduced by the Compedu framework that was already introduced by Marcelo at the beginning. So here we just want to learn more of who our participants are, and at the same time allow them to assess their own knowledge and understanding. So they can see if they are novice or they are experts, and what else they need to improve maybe in their knowledge or in their practice. Then after this short introduction, very brief introduction of the course, and before going into very practical recommendations, examples, and experiences, we introduce a conceptual introduction, which is very closely related with what Marcelo and Lourdes have introduced at the beginning of this session. So this conceptual introduction explains all the key concepts in detail that are covered in this, that support this training material. So you can see that it talks about concepts like evidence of learning, digital evidence analysis, data literacy, learning analytics, self-regulated learning, learning analytics and metacognitive decision making. And we see this in conceptual introduction to be very important since it is crucial for teachers to understand what lies beneath all the practices that we present later on. And we believe that this conceptual introduction will help them to go through the following course and follow further learning material more easier, and it will be more clear what we're talking about. So then we move to the first unit, which refers to learning design phase, the one as well in relation with this metacognitive framework that was presented by Airina. So here we talk about how data and what decisions should be made to collect the data so it would be generated. Here it is explained what settings of course activities are important to be completed to track learners' progress, what learning activities can be designed to generate evidence on learning and teaching design, and of course what tools should be embedded and used to capture data on learners' progress and their engagement. Here you can see that we have a lot of small, subunits that describe and all this that answer to these questions, and it is filled with many examples, screenshots, explanations, so it would be easier for teachers to understand what needs to be designed or changed in the course, so it would generate the data that is important for teacher. At the end of each unit, we have a quiz, a short quiz, 5 to 6 questions, where teachers can self-assess their knowledge and just to see if they succeeded to absorb the learning content of that specific unit. And as well, we have we suggest some open-ended self-reflective questions for teachers as well, again, to think of their own practice, to reflect on how they have designed the course and if there are any changes that need to be made. And we believe that these small self-assessment tasks foster teachers' metacognitive decision-making and their metacognition. And the second unit already relates to the learning and teaching design, learning and teaching phase, where we explain how data can be analyzed and interpreted to inform teaching and learning. And here we talk about this learning design and learning and teaching phase, when teachers critically analyze and interpret data-based evidence on learner activity and their performance. So here teachers can find a list of questions, for example, to answer depending on the objective of the evidence analysis. If they want to learn more about subject orientation or learning activities. As well, we provide some suggestions and recommendations on how to make, before that we provide a list of tools that can be used and that can inform on how engaged learners are with the learning activities and learning design. And here we add, of course, screenshots again to talk about this, like, for example, how activity completion report, can it show to a teacher, how a teacher should reflect on this data, so it would be useful and the teacher could make decisions based on the data. And also we provide some recommendations on how to make informed decisions as well. What I forgot again to mention, that each unit and each subunit has best practices included, where, for example, you can see examples of how the course is designed, or some learning activities are designed. For example, just to pre-assess learners' knowledge, that foster learners to think of their own learning, so they would be able to assess the knowledge before the course, so they would be able to share their understanding of the course topic, what assessment activities can be applied and organized at the end of the course, and so on. So best practices are very different, and at the same time they provide a wide picture of these examples, and it refers to some examples that Lourdes was presenting as well. And the final unit is already referring to the assessment, not assessment, sorry, about how to engage students in the virtual learning environment. Here we have we'll have a conceptual background on learners' engagement, as well as an overview of Moodle-based tools that can engage students, into activities, and at the same time they collect data and generate data that might be useful for teachers later on to think on, to analyze and reflect on when thinking about how to improve the teaching and learning design. So we talk a lot, and not too much, but about the dashboards, since it is rather new, I would say, maybe at some point topic. So, but still we cover and introduce how learning, how dashboards can be used to monitor learners and teachers' performance. And again, of course, knowledge, self-check activities. And at the end, we have a final activity where teachers will be encouraged to reflect on their practice by going through a list of self-check criteria or statements that will allow them to see if they have reconsidered all the aspects that might be important when designing a course that would generate the expected data about learners' engagement. I cannot show you this activity yet because it is something that has been developed and changed constantly, because we're still, since it is a self-paced course, we're trying to find the best way to introduce the final activity so that it would be useful, and at the same time it would concise all the information and it would allow teachers to think about how to do this. And we'll might collect feedback on the course just to foster teachers to think of their own learning experience, and again relate to their metacognition. Another small feature that we have is we have configured activities in a way so that teachers could mark when they have read the content, so they can mark it as done, and then they have access to progress bar where they can monitor their own learning. Since we talk about it in our training material, we find it very important to be included in our own course. So this is how our content looks like. And just to finish is that now we are going to, next week we are finalizing this learning training material. Then we'll start a peer review process when experts from different all partner universities will review the course and give us feedback. So we will improve it according to the feedback as well. And later on, we'll start in December, I think we'll start piloting with the teachers again from partner universities. And of course, this training material will be translated into all languages, which are 5 or 6 I think 5. So all languages of partner universities that are participating in this project. And so just to ensure a wider access to this material and to our resource. So since we think that while learning analytics has been analyzed at the theoretical level, and maybe it might be understood at the practical level, we need to inform in all languages as possible, maybe just teachers, just to know how to make use of this data. And maybe just one short note referring to what was told already by because we had this question. This training material as well includes examples from Moodle, just because we use Moodle as our own virtual learning environment in our courses. But the partner universities are encouraged to include examples of their own virtual learning environments and these platforms. When they will be translating the learning material, they will be able to adapt it to their own needs. So you will be able to find way more examples there. And that's it. If you have any questions or doubts about what we have developed so far, please feel free to ask.
Thank you very much, Giedrė and Maria Luisa. So with this, we completed the presentations, and as promised, we still have golden 10 minutes, maybe 12, for discussion. So I see that there are some active people in the question and answers and comments, but there are also quite interesting comments from people in the chat. So maybe let's start approaching them and reflecting on them, maybe one by one, or who would like to do that. So first of all, thank you very much, Lourdes, for addressing Joseph's request or interest about having this cross-country analysis, and I think this is a really very, very important and interesting reference that you provided. Aaron, I think I pronounced correctly, is asking how often should we have quiz to keep learners concentrated in the topic, and there is quite some returning discussion about quiz, how useful it might be in terms of maybe the presentations that we made today. I have some opinion, but maybe I would like to invite my colleagues first to comment on that. Who of you would like to comment on this?
As you want. The notion of quizzes for, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, the notion of using quizzes are very useful sometimes for the confirmation of understanding of certain concepts, and then see if it's well understood before a pre-organized set of questions, well organized regarding the subject, the topic we are working on. And then suggest some other things. We use these tools like adaptive learning in this sense. It's very useful in this sense. In order to conduct people, if we are thinking about also the idea of our presentation today applied to the use of digital evidence, we can pre-configure, gather, and then use also automatic ways of suggesting corrections to that, going deep into a certain subject.
I agree with you, Marcelo. I also was happy or lucky to see some examples where quizzes, short tests are used actually to intervene and clarify how much students perceived from the theory, how much it was clear to them, even in this sense, and then to refer to the parts of the theory where, let's say, the most common mistakes appear when they have assessment techniques. So it's quite a powerful tool. It's designed in line with the data, maybe.
And it's not easy to develop, if you want to do it correctly. If you want to ask some tricky question to actually detect, it's not easy.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a huge theory behind it. And how often, I think it's up to the teacher whether to have it after each intervention, a new maybe topic, a new theory, or maybe before assessment, before assignments. I think it's a part of learning design that is behind the teacher decisions.
It's interesting in flipped classroom approaches also when you provide content online on digital platforms, and before coming to a session that can be for discussion, more active one, just to try to correct things from the very beginning or detect problems that you can discuss in face-to-face or synchronous. You know, we have also this option.
I just would like to comment briefly on Josepha's, she posted already for the second time regarding memory, understanding, and knowledge. So if we unpack the concept of knowledge as a part of the competence, we have several levels, and we might apply these levels for diversification of assessment of learners following their capabilities to achieve knowledge. And memory or the ability to memorize is one thing. The other thing is to recall and to recognize the correct answer at two different levels of difficulty, let's say. So if we memorize by heart, and if we are able to recall recall the concept, the term, the definition is one level. If we are not able, if we have some memory gaps, some other problems, cognitive problems, there is facilitation that supports teachers in this way, which is recognition. So it is used in huge, big size groups. In medicine, in law, where we have a lot of terms, let's say, to be memorized, and then the facilitation is to recall, to recognize the correct term, the correct concept, the correct definition. So actually what you are saying would be actually described in more detail if you analyze what knowledge and memory and the things are from psychology area of science. Okay, now we have further comments here about the course and praise, and I hope that the newsletter will help us to reach out for those who are interested in accessing this self-learning material, we call it in the end, because there will be no teacher, but higher education teachers will be able to access it and to go through the steps. Any other
yeah,
that I missed?
I would like to mention something. So maybe another thing that it would be useful to explore a little bit more is the use of chat box to support students' performance. So we have a very short experience this year, and it was very successful. So to support teacher in monitoring action. So chatbot can record the most frequent questions of the students, for example, and the teacher can intervene if some more clarifications are needed, if extra content should be provided. So it's something that maybe is challenging. We know that it's very challenging because we tested this year, but I think more possibilities are open in this sense, taking in consideration that chatbot can provide very useful data about the behavior of the students.
I think it's a very good, very useful information, Lourdes, that you just shared with us. I think if we go to intelligent tutoring systems, we will often identify something very similar and very useful for teachers, because teachers get very tired with repeating the same and the same.
Yeah.
The same information to students. That is a perfect example.
Yeah, and mainly when you have a very many participants or many students in the same class, and you are repeating the same issues every time, so you can record and identify this, and maybe a chatbot can support this immediately when they need it. So and then just to attend specific issues when they are not clear enough, for example.
Okay, colleagues, as our time is actually coming to a very end, I would like still to share several short pieces of information. So first, that I saw already in the chat, yes, the recording of the session will be available on the website of Eden, where this week was announced, and you will be able to soon access it. And also on behalf of organizers, I would like to make 2 announcements for you. I hope they are useful and interesting. Eden Digital Learning Europe is sharing with their members the news that in the European Digital Education Hub, there is an open registration to become a member of Community of Practice, and you will see the link in the chat in order to join this hub. In the hub, there will be the next event on November 28th, of course, free of charge, and all registered in the hub will be able to access and participate. It's a policy and expert discussion on digital innovations and transformations through research, practice, and policy perspectives. Recently, in knowledge building activities, there were quite important challenges raised that education organizations, experts, researchers, and practitioners meet and raise these questions in order to be facilitated and further answered or solutions sought. So on November 28th, we invite you to join this event at 2 p.m. Central European Time, where we will have people from the European Commission, from UNESCO, headquarters and International Bureau of Education, European University Association, Irish University Association, from schools, where people will hear the pledges, the statements, and the instruments already available for the majority of sectors and education institutions in Europe and behind. So everybody is welcome, and the registration to the hub is in the link. And sorry, the other announcement was to click with the slides. Eden will have, of course, virtual events in the hub also during Open Education Week next time. But the physical event, the next very important event for Eden, will be organized in Dublin, in Ireland. That will be Eden Annual Conference 2023. So you can already book these days in your agenda, and we hope to see you in Dublin and continue our discussions on the things that we didn't have time today to cover. So I would like to cordially thank my colleagues from the Open University of Catalunya, Marcelo, Lourdes, Luisa, and also Giedrė, my colleague from Vytautas Magnus University. Thank you very much for this collaboration on a very important topic on how to better benefit from learning analytics in order to improve teaching, learning, and learning design and best experience for all of us. Thank you very much for all participants and all interesting comments and proposals. So European Online and Distance Learning Week is over with this event, but the recordings will be open for your review. So all the best and bye-bye.